Hi everyone. This story is regarding what happened to my mom after my great grandparents died. They were her financial providers, so it could not have been easy for her to after they had died. Just a warning though, this one would be a little hard to take in. At least it was when I first heard the story. My great grandfather said outright that my mom was her favorite grandchild, and this is the reason why. My mom told me and my siblings that her mom got very ill one day and almost died. When my mom knew about the critical situation of her mom, she talked to her dad and said, "If my mom dies, any woman you bring to this house will enter the door, but she will fly out of the window." My mom was barely 5 years old when she said this. Her grandpa learned about the incident, and that solidified her to being the favorite grandchild. Her grandma always made sure he had bonding moments with my mom, so my mom was really close to her grandpa. Now I'm stressing this because of what my mom had to deal with once they passed on. The worst day of my mom's young life happened. Her grandpa suddenly got sick. She was 7 years old at this time. On the second day of his sudden illness, he asked my mom to call for Uncle Judge. Outside the slightly open room, my mom heard the marching orders to his eldest child that he has to fully support my grandparents in order to fulfill his promise that my grandma be taken care of for the rest of her life. Great grandma was in the room the entire time, as she did not want to be away from her beloved while he was suffering from such a worrisome illness. The following day, great grandpa passed. My mom, great uncle, and great grandma were devastated. That was the most difficult day of my mom's life. Her provider, her idol, and her closest ally died that day. Not even her parents could ever match the love she had for her grandpa. For her, he was just the perfect person. The wake lasted for more than a week. The family was waiting for the university to permit my Aunt Linda to attend the burial, as she had just had her capping as a nursing student. Everyone had to go home to Kapil to attend the burial. It was at this time that the family thought that the way he died was suspicious and that it may have involved witchcraft. This made it more difficult for them to accept his death because he was very healthy until he got sick days before his death. During the wake, great grandma could hardly eat and hardly left great grandpa's side. My mom was always with her to make sure that she was well. The loneliness and the silence of the sufferings propelled my mom to where she is now, strong and steadfast in the face of profound sadness. My great grandma was lonely, so my mom, my uncle, and my grandma's sister had to watch over her to make sure she stays healthy. Months later, great grandma joined her husband. It was my mom who saw her dead body with outstretched arms as if welcoming something. This was actually the second time she passed away. The first time was midnight earlier that day, but she came back within 30 minutes. She described what she saw and the scents she smelled. My great grandmother said that it had smelled bad going there, but coming back, there was a sweet scent. Seeing my great grandma in the way she died for real made my mom understand death, and she was just a child back then. I can't even imagine what kind of impact this had on her, and she was only 8 when this happened. She learned what are the telltale signs that a person is about to pass. This time, it was my Uncle Jess who was the most devastated, since he was the favorite of great grandma. My mom found him washing her clothes and scolded him for doing it instead of watching over great grandma. Once he heard she had passed, in his grief, he threw away the clothes. The impact on him at her passing was as intense as my great grandfather's passing on my mom. The two felt very helpless. My mom was still grieving over her grandpa since not even a year had passed yet since his death. They felt the most love from them, and they didn't know how to face the days ahead. They asked each other Who will be their provider and protector now? They know they have no direct access to the financial support after their grandparents passed. There was no last-minute instruction from great-grandma as she suddenly died of cardiac arrest, and great-grandpa was more focused on the well-being of his daughter rather than his grandchildren because of his promise to her. My uncle and mom became close as siblings after the departure of the grandparents. My uncle had to go back to their parents since it was their grandparents that initially adopted him to begin with. My grandparents felt the financial impact of the passing of my great-grandparents. Their main supporter was gone. It was hard enough to support the numerous children they had when my great-grandparents were alive, but I can't imagine how much more difficult life was for them. My grandma's sister, Aunt Maria, was my mom's source of income. She would ask my mom to run errands for some money. Then my mom remembered the marching order for Grandpa to Uncle Judge. My mom went to him to ask if she could sell their ripe bananas that came from his 4,000 square meter garden. He agreed, and Mom started selling around 12:30 p.m. after lunch and earned 10% of the sale for her school needs. It was enough for my mom's school needs, but she wanted more so she could give to her younger siblings. She also felt she needed to work relentlessly to help her parents too. There were 2 students supported by the 2 sisters of my mom. At a very young age, her sense of responsibility was already intense. For her, she needed to contribute to the needs of the family, as she saw Grandma worried every time my mom's siblings who were still studying in college writing letters to ask for money. It was Uncle Judge who would handle it, but as a mother, my grandma was worried as she knew the responsibility her brother had to take on due to my great-grandpa's last words. One day, there were no bananas to sell. My mom didn't have pad papers for school that afternoon. She had no idea where to get the pad paper. She didn't want to ask money from anyone. Her mom had initially told her that her grandma's farm was not yielding enough products because some thieves took the peanuts from her farm. It used to yield a lot, but after years of good harvest, a lot of her grandma's peanuts were stolen. My grandpa's salary as a small town treasurer was only good enough for food. At this time, they had to send a few of their kids to college, some in high school, and still have young children to raise. My mom told me that my grandparents were quite at a loss on what to do after my great-grandparents died. I don't blame them. My great-grandparents had somewhat pushed them to have numerous children, and they did so under the assumption that my great-grandparents would help take care of them. I honestly don't know how they could have thought this would be sustainable, because by the time my great-grandparents died, they were quite old. Even if my great-grandpa didn't get sick at the time, I don't think he had many years left. Anyway, my mom was desperate to have some pad paper for that afternoon. So she went to my uncle's garden and found ripe guavas. My mom climbed the guava tree to pick the ripe ones. Unfortunately, the branch she was on touched the roof of his house since the tree was right beside it and even positioned right next to his room. He was sleeping at the time and woke up upon hearing the branch knock against the roof. In a half-asleep daze, his first reaction was to pick up his shotgun and point it at the person who disturbed his nap. My mom wasn't even scared apparently, and was even waiting for him to shoot her. Thankfully, he didn't outright shoot whoever was there and realized it was my mom. She yelled at him, "Uncle, come on! Please shoot me for stealing your ripe guavas!" The state of mind she had to be in to say such a thing. She was only 8, maybe almost 9 at this point. Shocked, he put his shotgun down and asked her why she challenged him to shoot her. My mom explained to him it was better to die than to steal again because she didn't have the pad paper that she needed. She may have been too responsible in my opinion and had stressed herself out in making money to buy whatever she needed and to help out her family by not adding any other expenses. Her uncle asked her why she needed to steal the guavas when she could have just asked him for money to buy the pad paper. She told him that she knew his responsibilities towards the education of her two sisters in USD, as well as his responsibility to take care of my grandma. With a cracking voice, he told my mom that he appreciated that my mom wanted to be self-sufficient, but stealing doesn't solve her issues. From that time on, my mom became one of his favorite nieces and told her if she needed anything, she was welcome to ask for it. But my mom rarely took up this offer. She was stubborn in her own way. She didn't want to trouble her relatives to give her money. Instead, she said she would pull out his gray hair for cents and dollars every time she needed money, and if there was no bananas to sell. I have to say it. It was difficult to even hear this the first time when I was a kid. My mom had a very difficult childhood, and she tried so hard to be self-sufficient at a young age in order to not bother her parents. She even tried to make sure that her younger brother also had things she needed. She was only in her elementary years, and she was facing so much difficulty financially that she even wanted to die by her uncle's hands. What kind of life did she have to even feel that way? It just boggles me. She is so strong to make it through her childhood, despite her inner desire to leave this earth early so that she didn't have to suffer anymore. And she was still grieving for her grandparents' passing, so for her to push and try to earn for money for herself and even for her younger brother is just a testament to her inner strength to make it through the difficulties of life. That saying that life throws you lemons? Forget lemons! She was thrown rocks, and she was expected to drink from it. But who she is now is proof that she pulled through the difficulties in her life and become successful. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please comment down below. Thank you. Bye.